Hi, welcome back to the McCall's Quilting Summer Garden Quilt Along. I'm Laura Roberts and I am walking through the garden with you in this project. And today I'm going to show you how to do the first part of the center block, which is so pretty and so beautiful, and you know, the whole quilt just makes me happy. I hope you're enjoying it too. So again, it's going to be similar in construction to the other ones. The centers is going to be very similar. It looks sort of like a tulip. And we have some of the same units that we've done before, put together the same way. But we do have a new one. And that new one is going to be a pieced strip. It's longer. No, it's kind of like a flying goose with like wide wings or something. Okay, so that's this one. And the way you make it is you have two 2.5-inch squares of the cream, and you've drawn your diagonal lines on them like we do. And you're going to put them here on the ends. And you want to make sure that when you sew them, just like with the flying geese, that you sew them so that these are not parallel, these little lines, and you're going to stitch and flip. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to do one at a time. Oops, there we go. This is really a cool little unit. You can find so many uses for it. And I'm not going to pin on this one. I am going to put my glasses on. Okay, so it's just like you always do, where you align the corners before you sew and go right along that 1/4-inch foot, just like that. What's wrong with that? Did you see what I did? I didn't sew on the line. It's okay to make mistakes like that. You know, it happens to everybody, and you may have friends who, when they're sewing or piecing or whatever, never do anything wrong, and I think they're few and far between. And I would rather, I know I've said this before, do something stupid on camera so you get to see it. You don't do it too. There we go. Now, if only I were Eleanor Burns, I could throw the threads over my shoulders. And if you don't know who Eleanor Burns is, go online and look her up. She's one of the great ladies of quilting. Okay, let's try this again. Now, I hope you remember the tip I gave you. Don't start sewing at the corner. Turn it around and start sewing where it meets the edge of that big strip, because that way it's not going to go down the hole. If you find on your machine that you have a lot of problem with that, where you have things that kind of disappear down the hole in the throat plate, you can buy something that's called a single hole throat plate. And they make them for all different manufacturers of sewing machines. And it really helps to keep that fabric from going down. So if that's something you have a problem with a lot, go ahead and treat yourself to a single hole throat plate. You'll be glad you did. Okay, now let's try this again. Okay, I'm just going to get that foot up a little bit. There we go. Okay, right down on the line. There we go. Okay, and I'm not going to bother pressing and flipping this one until I do both of them. I'll do both ends at once. So I'm only doing the pressing and flipping thing I can do all at once. Okay, so there we are. Oops, I want to align this one too. There we go. Good little thingy. Okay. I know I've said this before, but don't use green thread like I am. I'm just using green thread so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, up a little bit. There we go. Hold that guy down. Oops, there we go. Okay. Now we'll come over here. Oops. And I'll just trim this guy up. You can do it with a rotary cutter and a ruler. Don't do it with a rotary cutter without the ruler. That would be bad. Okay, I'm just going to press that seam, just kind of set the seam. And then, oh, there's a thread in there. We'll get that out. I'll just press that guy open there. And then press this little guy open. There. And look at that. Isn't that a cool unit? So I've already got one sitting here. On this side of the block, you sew a 2.5-inch square to the end, and just like we did with these. And then I'm just going to go ahead and sew these two again, because we do this center a lot. And I just want to make sure you get this oriented the right way. And this is why I'm showing it to you again, because it's very easy to do that. So you lay them out first, then when you fold that over, it's going to be in the right place, or the right orientation. Okay. Oops. I don't want to catch all those threads. Oh. Oops, come here, baby. I'm talking to fabric again. It's a good thing that they don't lock people up for that, because they kind of could, I suppose. I could be scaring people. There we go. All right. Okay, I'm going to come over here and press this guy. There we go. Okay. So now I'm going to sew this one to this one, so it looks like my tulip. Okay. When you've been doing a lot of these, and I know you've already done a lot of these, if you're up to date on your homework, you've done 8 of these already. So you know how fast this little center piecing can be? There we go. Making sure that my seam allowance that I press to that side stays over there. Okie doke. All the way through. Now, I'm not going to press that one open right now. Just like I did before. If I'm sewing things that don't have to cross the seam I just sewed, I can just do it right now. Okay, so I'm just going to line that up. Oops. Okay. Line that guy up. I'm just going to go right underneath. There we go. Now, there are, right here, you'll see that there are points to match. So it's one of those ones where you have a diagonal seam coming into a point. So all I'm going to do is align the very end here and make sure that these are aligned right where we are sewing past. Okay, and then making sure that I go right through that intersection right there, because that's where the point is. Okay. There we go. So now I'll do a little pressing. Press both of those. Okay, so I can just set seams. There. And then I'm going to press them. I'm going to press this guy inward like that, because if I do that, it's only one seam on the inside, only one seam allowance that's kind of stacked up there. Okay, yeah, sit. There we go. Good fabric. Okay, now, as you can see, these 3, 2, 3, I can sew those together without pressing in between 2. So I'm going to do that now. But here, I'm going to be aligning points. You remember how to do that? I'm just going to do it right here with a few pins. Okay, kind of hard maybe for you to see the green on the green mat. Okay, so I'm going to look at right here there's a point, and here there's a point. And they don't seem to have the same amount of seam allowance. So it's a good thing I'm pinning. Because if I went just by seam allowance, that pins, there we go. That seam allowance is a tiny bit bigger than this one. So that's when it really works, oops, to pin. There we go. Because if I hadn't pinned, if I had just sewn through that, because the seam allowances aren't exactly the same, my point would not have matched. There we go. And I'm going to do the same thing down here. Again, when you see that intersection like that, where the lines cross, that's where your point is. I'm just going to pull that guy through, and I'm going to put the pin. It's so much easier to see when you're the one doing it. There, that's better. I'm going to put that right through that point too, like that. Okay. Remember, I'm keeping those pins vertical, and I'm just going to pin to either side, like that. Oops. And like that. Okay, and then I can take that pin out because I know it's in the right place. And over here, keeping that pin vertical, I'll put in that second pin. I didn't do it earlier because I wanted to get this aligned before I did the one that was closer to it. Okay, I'll take out that pin now. All right. Okay, here we go. Put that little guy in. Someday I will know what that should be called. And if anybody knows what that should be called, let me know. All right. There we go. Okay, and away with the pin. Got my awl ready, just so I can push down that seam allowance so it doesn't get caught up on it. Okay. Okay, and the same thing here. I just want to hold that down so it doesn't get caught. Sometimes a machine can have a hard time going over all that fabric. And then if it does, it can pull everything out of alignment for you. And then usually what happens is the seam gets way too narrow right at the point. Oh, okay, there we go. Okay, remember what I said about how when you have so many things lined up that don't have crossing seams, you don't have to press in between. So I'm almost done with that thread catcher, aren't I? There, so now I can just add this one. Now, if I look, I know which way it needs to be. It needs to be at the top. And I don't need to pin this one. No, I'm just going to sew it. There we go. Making sure my seam allowances are lying flat underneath there, which I can feel. Okay, looks good. Yeah, right over that little bump. That was a big seam allowance. Okay, and we're going to press these and see how we did. Alrighty, you ready to see? Let's set the seams, and then we'll just press this open. Ooh, yay, it's pretty. Oh, so pretty. Okay, I'll turn it around and do the same thing. Just press that guy open. Isn't that pretty? If you were home, you would have a bigger iron and it would do more. Now I wanted to show you something. Okay, look at that. Do you see that lump? Look at that lump right there. And there's nothing here. So it shows up even more. That tells me I'm going to press that open instead of pressing it to one side. There we go. I think I'm going to be happier with this. I won't have, at least I'll have a bump on two sides of a corner instead of just on one, because the contrast is so great when you don't have it. And look at this one. Do you see how that seam allowance was here and then it got sewn there? It doesn't really matter. I'm just going to press it flat. If it bothers you, you can unsew and redo it. But the nice thing about a quilt top is no one ever sees the inside. Once it's quilted, it's just you. Okay, there we go. Oh, pretty, pretty, pretty. Yay. I have to show you. See that point right there? Isn't that beautiful? And these points, they worked. Yay. Oh, and before I forget, I have to show you this. I have to show you this. I remember way back in the beginning when we first started the quilt along, I told you about these solids that are unlike any solid I've ever worked with. I am absolutely in love with these fabrics. These are from Northcott too. The Charlotte collection, you know that's from Northcott, but these are also from Northcott, and they are their Toscana, or Toscana, I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it, line. And if you can see, I wish you were here, but it is the most tightly woven, glorious solid, ever. They're just amazing. The selvage would blow your mind. It looks like, you know, a braid because it's that well made. So just a thought. Okay, I'm going to add this last one now, and we'll have that little unit all ready to go. Okay. Back on my perch. Okay. I'll just align this and get my little thread guy. I need a new one, don't I? Okay. Okay. Sometimes the feed dogs don't like to start on something really thick, but you can use an awl to just get things started. There we go. Okay. Oops. Let's get that. There we go. Okay, so when I'm sewing this, I want to make sure I'm coming through that intersection and that one. Again, I'm matching these up. You can put a pin in there if you want to. I'm not going to worry about it this time. I think I can just match them up by holding them in the right place with my fingers. Let's see if I'm right. I bet you can do it too. And then get my awl out for that last little corner. A lot of machines will pull the very last part that you're sewing, the last part of the seam will go to the left or the right. So that's a good reason to use an awl if your machine's doing that, because it'll make your seams a whole lot straighter if you use an awl for that last little bit when you're guiding it through. Okay, now we'll press this guy, set that seam, and press it open. Oops, you feel that? Well, you can't, but it's another one of those lumps. So I'm going to go ahead and just show you. Look at this. You've got right here, you already have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 layers right there. If I add this with, there's a layer there on each side, 1, 2, 3, 9 layers in one little corner. So that's why I'm pressing this open. And you'll notice that there, sometimes my seam allowances might seem small on these pieces, but that's because I'm just cutting them with scissors instead of it being a seam allowance that I'm sewing a certain width. Okay, there we go. And there it is, the corner unit for the center block, all ready to go. So your homework is to make 4 of these, just 4, because there's just one center block. Go ahead and make 4 of those, and then when I see you back here next time, we're going to go ahead and make the side units so we can finish that center block. And of course, after that, we get to put the quilt all together. So one quick thing, if you don't have your kit yet, and you want to use these same gorgeous fabrics I'm using, I love these. Look at that little tendril. Isn't that, it's so feminine and so summery, and I can't tell you how happy they're making me. So anyway, I hope you're getting the kit. If you want the kit, go to mccallsquilting.com/quiltalong and you can order it there. So next time we're going to be doing the side units for the center block. We'll be putting that block all together, and then the blocks will be all done. So I hope you're having as much fun with the quilt along as I am, and thank you so much for joining me. It's been fun as can be for me.